Welcome to another episode of the Akiona Law Podcast, wherein we talk about anything and everything that intersects in the areas of family law and divorce. I am Lani Akiona, and today we're going to be delving into collaborative divorce and what is a collaborative divorce coach and why you need one in your collaborative divorce case. And today I have with me collaborative divorce coach Beth Hirnle. Did I say that right?
You sure did.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Lonnie.
Well,
You did.
welcome to the podcast, Beth. I'm so happy to have you on today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here and I'm looking forward to discussing this topic with you.
Well, I'm excited that you're here because sometimes it's when we're talking about collaborative divorce, I've done collaborative divorce cases without a coach and without a divorce coach, and having done both, now
Yeah.
I am an advocate for having a divorce coach, and it's hard for people to kind of really understand why you need one or why do you need one and what does a collaborative divorce coach do. So that's what I really want to get into with you today. So I'm very
Okay.
excited to dive into this. So,
Awesome.
you know what? Why don't we start off, Beth? Why don't you tell us about yourself? I'm like, how did you get into becoming a
Yeah,
collaborative divorce coach anyway?
for sure. Well, actually, the story of how I got into collaborative coaching is somewhat funny. It's from another collaborative coach who's in our community, Sherry Vernon. She and I have been colleagues for, oh gosh, 25 years now as I'm aging myself and dating myself here. And she had gotten trained collaboratively the year prior and just said, Beth, I think this would just be right up your alley and you should check it out. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I've been in practice for over 25 years and have a lot of experience working with families. And actually, in particular, my early training was in working with teenage moms and working in multi-generational households, which was fascinating, working with folks in schools and then in private practice. And she mentioned this to me, and I ordered Karen Bennell's the co-parenting handbook
Oh,
and read it that day and just it ticked all of my boxes. And I thought, wow, after being in private practice for so long, what a great field to dive into and just kind of add to my skill set. And so I did all the trainings
okay.
that, we all do,
Hmm.
and just really have immersed myself in the community and love, love coaching. It's just been such a wonderful experience. So that's a little bit of background of how I got into coaching, which was from a colleague who was already in the community.
And Sherry Vernon is a well-established collaborative divorce coach here,
That's
and
right.
yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
what
exactly.
what is it that you love about being a collaborative divorce coach?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many things. I love the teamwork element. And
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
started off the podcast with like, why do we need a collaborative divorce coach? Like,
Yeah.
what is the purpose, right? And so, as you know, right, when we think about collaborative divorce, it has a different setups, right? Where we have a team approach essentially to help
Hmm.
guide our clients through this process. And the attorneys are there to do the legal elements of the
Right.
collaborative process, right? Literally explaining the law, drafting the documents, focusing in that way. As you know, we often have a financial neutral who's fantastic to help gather, what are the financial components of a divorce?
Hmm.
And then lastly, when we think about divorce, there's a third component, which is what are the psychological and emotional components of a divorce, right?
Oh,
And
right.
there's the legal piece, there's the financial piece, but in collaborative law, we want everybody to come out as emotionally healthy as they can.
Yes.
Oftentimes, right, we're working with
Yeah.
folks who have kids. And, one of the roles of a collaborative divorce coach is to work with those parents to help
Mhm.
them make that transition from spouses to co-parents,
Hmm.
right? And
Right.
how do you find a way to work together to support your kids, right?
Right.
That's a big draw for a collaborative divorce process. And then one other thing I'll say is on the team, right? The
Mhm.
collaborative divorce coach is really managing what's the emotional content in the room, what's the level, right?
Yes.
We're
Yes.
asking people to make really big life-changing decisions, and we're asking them to work together despite dissolving their marriage. And we want them to
Right.
be able to make really good decisions when they're in an emotionally safe space. If we're working just from anger or fear, we won't
Right.
make decisions differently than when
Yes.
we're in a more open space.
And so just so to kind of almost in a way recap what you said, it's
Yeah.
you have like the collaborative divorce team, right? You have the lawyers there that are essentially handling the legal aspect of it. Then you have the financial neutral that's handling the financial aspect of it, helping
Yes.
with the financial decision making. And I like how you said that the role of the divorce coach is there to help regulate the emotional aspect of it.
Right, exactly. And also the communication piece,
Oh,
right?
thank
So,
you. The
so
communication.
those things
Yeah.
really link together, right? So when we are emotionally activated, we don't tend to communicate in our best ways, right? That's when we, might be throwing barbs across the
I
room.
know I don't.
Right? Yeah, nobody does, right? I mean, and
Nobody does.
actually, our bodies are designed that way, right? Our nervous system gets activated, and boom, we go in that, fight, flight, or
Or
freeze,
freeze. Yeah.
fawn, different mode. And that's
Mhm.
just part of being human,
Right.
right? And so, often couples dynamics they'll get kicked up in the divorce
Right.
process, right? And
Hmm.
one person will start talking, and the other person's already jumped to five conclusions about what it is they're going to say, or how they've said it, or
Uh-huh.
what they mean by it.
Right.
And so, my role is to really help in that process so that these folks can really hear one another and
Hmm.
communicate in a way that's effective, and then help manage the temperature in the room. To your point, right? When we get activated, we get worked up. So my job is to help
Yeah.
folks, including the entire team, right? It's stressful for everybody,
It is
who's
stressful.
involved, right? It is, I mean, it's hard work that we do, helping folks dissolve marriages. People don't go into it looking for a divorce, right? And so what we're doing is really challenging. So it's helpful for the whole team to kind of be able to be in an environment that's as calm as possible.
And I know when I get emotionally, and it's essentially here, because it goes back to talking about not only is a divorce coach helpful
Mhm.
in terms of managing that communication and trying, and Campbell now talks about that,
Yeah,
transitioning from the role of spouses to being the business of being co-parents when you have
that's right.
kids. But if you remove kids from the equation, because I can see some people saying, well, I don't have kids, so how's the
Right.
divorce coach going to help me? And
Exactly.
again, it goes to that point where we carry that in a way, the what is it called? That emotion, that dance that we do of
Yeah.
communication from
Yeah.
when we're married to that space here in the
Exactly.
collaborative divorce team. And
That's
for
right.
me, when I get emotionally dysregulated, it's either fight, flight, or freeze, and I tend to fight. And
Yeah.
fighting for me means I'm yelling. There's probably some F-bombs being dropped in
Right.
between.
Right.
And
Right.
and not only from that is I've gone through that where I've become emotionally dysregulated going through this collaborative divorce process with my counterpart attorney, where
Right.
I'm
Exactly.
getting triggered and I'm activated and I'm raising my voice. And
Yeah.
the divorce coach essentially has to step in between the attorneys and say, whoa, let's wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, for the attorneys, right, your job is really challenging because you're trained to be opposing parties, right? To
Mhm.
be working against one another, right? Whereas in collaborative environment, that's not the case.
Yeah.
You're really working together, and the focus isn't on one person getting their desired outcome. The focus
Mhm.
is on both people, right?
Yeah.
Coming to a good enough agreement where they both feel like they can sleep at night, right? And not have an experience of, wow, I was really, raked through the coals over here or over there. But we're looking for both people to come out as financially healthy as possible and then as emotionally healthy as possible.
Emotionally healthy. Because
Yeah,
with the
exactly.
divorce coach, and I'm sorry, with the divorce coach, not only is the divorce coach there to, in a way, help manage miscommunications between the
Yeah.
parties,
Yeah.
but I was going to between the attorneys themselves.
That's right, because you can get positional, right? Because you're used to being in a role of advocacy, right?
Right.
And it's my client, I'm going to protect. And it is true, you each have your own client, right? And it is true that you're each representing, one person. But again, the approach that you're using is no, we're encouraging these two people to come up with an agreement that works for them, right? Not necessarily an agreement that attorney A feels should happen or even
Right.
attorney B feels should happen, right? It's really allowing the two parties to work together with the support of the team to come up with an agreement. And
Mm-hmm.
so that often can be an activator for folks like you're talking about, where it's like, wait, hold on a second here. Like, wait, I may be used to doing minimum for spousal support, and now we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the low end, the high end, right? And having to remind yourselves that the focus is on I'm providing the information for my clients and I'm giving them the information that they need to make a well-informed decision for
Right.
them and their process. It's their process, right? So my job is to help make sure, right, that that's what's happening in the collaborative environment, right? So to your point, sometimes checking
Uh-huh.
with the attorneys and saying, all right, let's look at what's happening here. Is anybody feeling really protective or like they're over
Mhm.
advocating perhaps? And then what might we need to do to address that?
And spousal support is a really good topic too, because that can be a very, I mean, not that can be, that typically is a very touchy topic
Yeah,
for both spouses, whether it be the partner paying the spouse paying spousal maintenance and the
sure.
spouse receiving it.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. I mean,
Very triggering.
anytime it's very triggering, right? And for most couples, not all, but most, money is often an issue,
Oh, it
right?
is.
And I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the most common challenges that
Yeah.
couples have. And then you come into this divorce process where now you're having to suss out kind of who gets what, when, where, and
Hmm.
how,
Hmm.
right? And when we've got kids involved,
Right.
that's almost, I don't want to say easier, but we focus on those kids as we want you both to be financially healthy because you're going to be better parents for your children,
Right.
right? Your financial health sets up success for your kids, right? And
Right.
so we try to have folks focus on their financial settlement with their kids in mind,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes then it looks different than
Yeah.
what, may traditionally happen. Because we're looking at how old are your kids? What are your goals for your kids, right? What do they need? How are you going to account for that? That's the other thing that collaborative divorce coaches really bring to the table and the co-parent coaching is helping people think about not just now, but like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, shoot, even 20 years from now,
Right.
right? So that's something that we bring to the table that adds to the experience, but sometimes also increases the complexity a little bit as well because we're so thorough.
And it goes to even if you don't have kids and you're talking about spousal support, there's always a lot of fear for that lesser income spouse where am I going to be okay five,
Right.
10, 20 years from now?
Right, exactly. And to the point to the person who might be paying, right?
Mhm.
Are they going to also be able to support themselves, right?
Right.
In addition to supporting the other. And so that's part of the collective that we're bringing to collaborative divorce is how do you both end up okay?
How you both end up okay?
How do
Because
you
usually,
both end up okay? Yeah. Yeah.
usually with the spouse who's paying that spousal support, they have their own. It's this. What I see is this. My goal is I want to retire in X
Yeah.
number of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do we balance my goal where I want to retire in X number of years with their spouse's goal of, will I be okay?
Yeah, sure, exactly. Particularly, right, if you have a situation where one parent's been more of a stay-at-home parent, if you will,
Mhm.
right, and has kind of, focused on the lion's share of that, right? And so then we're talking about, is there maybe some retraining that needs to happen, or what would it look like for that person to get back into the workforce,
Right.
and how do we create a runway for that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all of these factors that go into play, and so, having a coach at least allows for a better assessment of these factors because again, we're looking at them from a calmer state of being and a more data specific space of being as well, right? If we let our anger drive our decisions in divorce, then let's just talk about how differently that's going to turn out versus, okay, we're two adults, we've decided to dissolve our marriage. What's the best way we can do it?
Right. Not only the anger, but the fear too, because
Yeah,
again,
right,
if we, we have those situations where it's not even like a parent who has been a homemaker to take care of the kids. A lot of
right,
times when you have marriages and the kids aren't involved or the kids aren't there anymore, you still have that lesser income earning spouse.
right, right,
And
exactly.
how do I know I'm going to be okay? Just because I've got to think about my Social Security earnings aren't going to be as
Sure.
high. What's going to help in terms like I've dealt with this too, where you have spouses that have been together for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
One spouse was either not working or not making as much money, and now
Mhm.
that they're older, and there could be some health issues and health concerns,
Mhm.
especially for the lower income spouse. Like, how do I know I'm going to be okay moving forward? And that
Right,
fear, and I've seen it happen where it just, you can't help it happen as an attorney where I may feel protective over my client,
right,
especially
right.
if they earn less. And again,
Sure.
like you reference, I may unknowingly now in the team meetings be positional,
Yeah. Yeah.
unintentionally.
Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's
Yeah.
just it, right? Is that, so much of our emotional climate, if you will, is happening underneath, right?
Right.
And we're not necessarily as familiar with it. But you started to touch on a topic that I know we talk about in our community is, in terms of like the silver or the gray divorces, right?
Ah,
Folks who are deciding to divorce and maybe they're already retired or they're just about to
they're
retire.
about to retire.
And it's like,
Mhm.
holy smokes, how do
Yeah.
we do this,
How
right?
do you
And
do it?
that adds a whole other layer of stressors, right?
It does.
And so yeah, and so again, we can talk about those things in a different way because we're working together, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of like if we all put our heads together, right,
Mhm.
and the attorneys are providing that legal guidance, right, the financials providing the financial guidance, and
Uh-huh.
then it's like, the coach is there to kind of maintain the communication, it allows for creativity because it's
Right.
like, right, five minds can be better than one if we're able to approach it again collaboratively, right?
Hmm.
How can we be creative so that both people can be okay? And that's a completely different framework, right? That
Yeah.
that we're bringing to the table. And that's something that the coach really helps drive home is, well, wait, how do we reframe a situation? It looks like this, but perhaps it could look like this. And let's get curious. Yeah,
Let's get curious.
let's get curious.
Yes. Let's
Mhm.
get curious. Listen.
Let's get curious, right? Let's get the whys, right? The
Yeah.
whys help us, right? Because that's where we get to, well, is it because I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to support myself? And so that's why I'm holding on to this,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Or is it that I always saw myself moving here, right? When we get underneath it a bit more, it helps others get more compassion and a bit more understanding, and
Hmm.
then creates more opportunities for creativity, right? Whereas in a
Yeah.
traditional process, if you just have an attorney going between an attorney, there's less room for that. There's less room for that. Doesn't mean you can never be creative, but there's less room because the folks aren't working together, right? They've got
Hmm.
somebody who's doing it
Hmm.
on their
Right.
behalf. Yeah.
And I under like you're talking, especially about a lot of times we're trying to move together as a team, remove our clients from the positions to the
Yeah.
why underneath, to
Yeah.
getting curious.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we get curious. That's our key elements piece, right? Of like, let's
Right.
understand this connection to the house for some, like, what that might be for somebody, right? Or any other number of variables, right, that we might consider in the process. And so just having a coach on that team really helps facilitate these conversations. Um, because, as attorneys, you're trained in one way, right? And as
Uh-huh.
a coach, we're trained in a
Yeah.
different way, right? And to the point, like we we're talking about today, there's so many different facets to divorcing that, one person doesn't cover them all. And so that's another just real benefit to collaborative divorce as
Hmm.
well, is that you have folks who are just experts in their particular fields that help create a more holistic experience.
Well, a holistic and comprehensive team.
Yeah, exactly.
And because especially like when you mentioned reframing, and I want to talk about that because in a way, a
Sure.
position it could be like, let's just say a wife could say, I want the house.
Sure.
That's her position.
Sure. Hmm.
And even with the help of, again, with a collaborative divorce attorney, still that collaborative divorce coach can come in and help. Well, what's the why?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's the why behind the position of I want the house?
Yeah, and not in a way that makes people feel defensive. It's so interesting
Mhm.
that we're using the word why, because in counseling land, it's like, ask why, right?
You
Because
don't.
often people can feel like defended, like they have to
Mhm.
justify. But we
Mhm.
do it in a way that's different, like, tell me more, right? I
Right?
want
Tell
to
me
keep the
about that.
house because, like,
Yeah.
okay, the kids have grown up here. Great. Tell me more. What
Hmm.
else is there? We just get more curious so we can get more specific,
Hmm.
to um, what a person wants and why they might want it. But
Hmm.
then we're also providing the reality, right? Well, let's see if that's possible, right? Is it
The
possible?
reality check.
There's the reality check, right? And so sometimes we need, not sometimes, we throughout the process need to be able to provide those reality checks as well, right? And
That's where the financial neutral comes in with a reality check.
that's exactly right. Yeah, we're looking at this is what we're looking at. How do we make this happen or can we? And we might
Mhm.
not be able to. So then the coach is able to help folks come to terms with that as well, right? Like, wow, this is turning out different than what you thought it might be. And what are the outside supports you have as well, right? So for
Right.
coaching, our job is to get them through the divorce, but we're also there to make sure they have extra support. Do you have a therapist you can talk this through, right? Do you have folks that are there for you, that can also support you in the process?
And going back to that whole piece of, and I always think I kind of think as well, the coach is there throughout the meeting because people when we're doing these collaborative divorce team meetings,
Yeah.
they're usually for 4 hours.
Three
Two to
hours,
four
right?
hours.
Generally, yeah, yeah, yeah. Usually 3 hours, right? I mean, generally, but it's a long time to your point, right? That we're with the clients for at least 2 hours in a meeting.
Right. two
Absolutely.
hours
Yes.
in a meeting and
Yeah.
it's intense and it's a lot of emotional pieces going on
Yeah.
and just in terms of feelings coming up,
Yeah.
triggers. And I like the divorce coach being there because I think of them as taking the temperature of the room,
Correct.
not
That's right.
only the attorneys but of the clients, because sometimes, and I've seen this happen too with one of my clients, where when the husband is talking they start shutting down,
Yeah,
almost as if,
sure.
what is that, what do you say, fight, flight, or freeze.
Freeze. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And
Hmm.
that's an automatic physiological response,
Hmm.
right? So being able to recognize, hey, here's what's happening.
Hmm.
Let's take a time out and do what we need to do to kind of bring you back. I always kind of say like back online or back on board.
Back
And
online or back
yeah,
online. I love
back
that.
online, right? Because it's what you're talking about is that executive functioning goes offline,
Yes.
right? And then they're just shut down or they're
They're
just
shut
in
down.
it.
Right.
Exactly. So tips and tricks, coaches, we bring tips and tricks as well to the team.
Mhm.
I teach folks about the vagus nerve, for example, and how when we can get that activated, it rebalances our nervous system. So we'll
Uh-huh.
use things like ice water that we can put on our wrist, that activates that vagus nerve, or I'll even make folks get up and move around.
Oh,
Um,
that's good.
yeah, yeah. Blowing bubbles is another one that's really fun. Actually, when you blow bubbles, it automatically, like, first off, who doesn't have fun blowing bubbles? There's that, right?
Blowing bubbles,
Right,
right?
blowing
Yeah.
bubbles, really. But to blow bubbles, you
Wow.
have to be able to exhale in a way that regulates your breathing. If you try
Mm.
to blow a bubble and you're just like it doesn't work, you have to be able to like exhale in a very specific way to make the bubbles happen.
Yeah.
And doing that is what calms your vagus nerve. It activates the vagus nerve and it's what calms your nervous system. So even just a tool like that, right,
You know
is
what?
really fun for folks. Yeah.
I'm getting calm just picturing in my head, thinking about blowing a bubble
No, for real,
and
right?
how
It
much
does.
fun it is.
It is fun and it just
Yeah.
calms you down. And it's one of those things again that, our we know more than ever our physiology is absolutely what impacts our emotions and then therefore our thoughts and our feelings and the decisions that we make, right? And so again, we want people to be able to make good decisions in an open space, where they're able to make a decision and think clearly about it. And the coach really brings that element
Oh
to
my
the
gosh, yes,
process.
exactly. That's the element that the coach brings in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
again, it's hard. I mean, no matter the best training that I've received as a mediator and these different forms of mediation, especially
Sure.
getting mediation training as the curious mediator.
Yes, yeah. Jacinta Gallant, right? For example,
Right.
she has a very specific,
Jacinta Gallant, right.
yeah, exactly, very specific, curious, right? Her focus is
Mhm.
on curious mediation, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You could still always use more, right? We can always use more tools and bits and pieces.
Well, and again, it's just for support because when I'm in as part of a collaborative divorce team and I'm part as a collaborative divorce attorney,
Yeah.
no matter the best mediation training I've had, it's still in a little way, like I still in a way, I'm thinking in my head, I'm the attorney here.
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, with the collaborative divorce coach, it really does help me stay centered
Yeah.
and move away from taking position
Yeah,
because again,
exactly.
it's
Right.
hard.
It's hard. It's
Hard
hard,
as an
right?
attorney.
It is hard as an attorney. Yeah. I mean, it's just not how you're trained, right?
Mhm.
But you're doing this work for a reason, right?
Right.
Because it's leads to better outcomes, right? For folks who are able to be in that same room together, who are able to work with one another, they come out not feeling as jaded. Is one of the
Not as
benefits.
jaded.
They're not
I
as
think,
jaded.
or they just kind of they feel in a way a little bit more satisfied having to really come up with this really well thought out, durable agreement.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think for an attorney, one way to look at your role is you're the attorney, but you're there as like the legal educator, right? Is
Right.
kind of one way to think about it when you're working collaboratively. My job is to educate, right? And give clients the information they need
Hmm.
to be able to make a decision, right? Knowing that it's their decision. If somebody, wants to do something that's way outside of the bounds, right? As an attorney,
Yeah.
you're going to say, this is kind of way outside of the bounds here. And let's really think about this. Have you really considered everything that's involved with this decision, right? So you're providing that education.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of the day, because it's a collaborative process, the clients get to decide that they do. They get to decide what's going to be best for them.
And
Yeah.
I also think too, like people may say again, in terms of in terms of the collaborative divorce coach, where, well, can't I just have the attorney and the financial neutral
Yeah.
just be part of the team?
Right.
Isn't that good enough?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, people think about money, right? And we all
Right.
do. I mean, we know that when we're having a joint team meeting, it is an expensive
Hmm.
meeting because they're paying for all of us at one time. And what I
Hmm.
always tell folks is that you actually end up saving money in the long run because we're able to identify are
I agree.
people right going at it right now and are they going to make a decision that they're going to regret? And then like a week later, they're going to come back and say, nope, I changed my mind, right? So being able to um, help manage the pacing of the process, right? And getting folks to a space. So there's times when, for example, I'll work with the couple in between meetings often. What do we need to do to help you guys get to a place where you can, right?
Right.
What does that look like? Right? Are there some things from before that we need to just kind of close out so that you're able to kind of be able to make those decisions, right? And those are more affordable conversations, right, than they are with an attorney necessarily, like often, right? So there's work outside of those full team meetings that the divorce coach will do, that couples often find really, really helpful. And issues where they may get stuck with the team's support and approval, sometimes we work them outside of the team, right? Especially for
Yeah.
like a parenting plan situation, for example. We can take that outside of the team and get some agreements made and get some work done that then gets brought back.
And I appreciate you saying that the divorce coach, and I do feel the divorce coach makes things more efficient,
Yeah,
which saves the parties monies in the long run,
in
because
the
as you
long run.
said, the divorce coach can have that separate meeting with the two clients
Yeah,
and essentially, like you touched upon, like, what do we have that may have happened in the past that's keeping you stuck from moving forward here? What do we need to work on? And
right,
I, as
right.
an attorney, do not need to be present in that meeting.
No, exactly, exactly, right, exactly. No, you don't. Yeah, absolutely. You're right about that. Absolutely. Yeah, it's just we just help keep the trains on the track, is also one way to look at it. I often will say, I'm your divorce concierge, right? The coaches, we also come with a lot of resources, right? In the
Right,
collaborative community, we have a lot of resources, right? We have
right.
real estate agents who are trained, we have mortgage brokers who are trained, we have different people who are trained, right, to provide additional support. Um, we don't use therapy against one another in a collaborative divorce, right? We encourage our folks, like, go get that support, or
Yeah.
sometimes they can use that against one another, right? So
Mhm.
we're really trying to set folks up for a new way of how can you dissolve a relationship with some respect at the end of the day, because you're both two people. You found your way together. Now you're going apart.
Well, it's all part of that thing, right? That conscious uncoupling.
Right, right, right. What was it? Gwyneth Paltrow, I think, wasn't
Yeah,
she the one who coined it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
uncoupling.
kind of like the conscious uncoupling of people. I always tell clients, don't worry, we're not going to have crystals and we're not going to sit there necessarily and go, oh, I'm right. But that, yeah, like, you know, you're two adults and you've made a decision. How do you get through this in the best way possible? Nobody needs to be holding hands and singing into the sunshine together, right? Where you're skipping down the road after this
I
divorce, like,
know.
wow, that was amazing.
Yeah.
No, but you can respect one another as human beings who really have the right to live life in as healthy as a way as they can,
Right.
and in a financially secure way as best as possible. We want that for people on our planet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to me, it just goes to, again, like you don't have to, I love that image. You don't have to, at the end of your divorce, we don't expect you to be skipping off into the
No,
sunset together holding hands,
no,
but
yeah.
it's just, acknowledging that just because you get divorced doesn't mean you don't love someone anymore. You still have
Sure,
love for that person, you're just not
sure,
in love with them.
for sure.
And
Absolutely.
because of that love that I had for you as part of,
Yes,
the fact that we were in this intimate relationship for how many years,
exactly.
how do we dissolve that with still maintaining that respect and love that I had for you?
Exactly. I think about for many people when they get
Mhm.
married, right? There's a process. Some
Mhm.
folks, they're hiring the DJ and maybe the florist and then
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
photographer, right? And they're having to kind of make all these decisions together, generally speaking,
Right.
on what is that going to look like and who do we need
Right.
to help us make this happen and how are we
Mhm.
going to handle that? It's kind of the same thing when you're ending your marriage, right? You're not hiring
Right.
the DJ, but you might, in fact, have that divorce coach, for
Right.
example, and then that financial neutral, and then collaboratively trained attorneys, right, who can help
Yeah,
you deconstruct your relationship in a way that, again, is good enough and
it's good
both
enough.
people and both people can sleep at night.
You know what's funny? I love this. If anything, that is such a great analogy where
Yeah.
to me, the collaborative divorce coach is like a DJ
Yeah.
because you can't have a good wedding without a good DJ.
Right.
And you
Totally.
can't,
Right. We're spinning the tunes, right?
I
We're like
know.
reading the energy of the crowd. Are people
Yeah.
bored? We better like spunk up the music a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah. And you
absolutely.
can't have an effective collaborative divorce without that collaborative divorce coach,
Totally.
just like a
Exactly.
DJ. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's really funny.
I love
I'll have
that.
to bring that, in our case, perhaps, right? We've got one we're working on now, can kind of spin some music, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's a really good way to look at it for sure.
That's a good way. What would you say to someone that the question being, I guess, would be, well, I don't need a divorce coach because my spouse and I have already been through counseling and that
Ah,
didn't that didn't work.
yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, I make it super clear, and this is what I tell attorneys to tell them.
Uh-huh.
This is not somebody who's going to be your counselor. This
Mm.
person is not trying to bring you back together again. This person is not trying to even solve what happened in the past,
Ah,
right? There
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
actually have to be resolution to be
yeah.
able to move forward, but what this
Right.
person will do is
Mhm.
give you the skill set that you need to be able to communicate in a way that you can hear one another and that you can make good decisions. That's the difference,
I
right?
love that.
Yeah, it's not to fix. It's to
Yeah.
let's help you move forward. And you got to be able to hear one another in order to do that.
I love that. The divorce coach isn't there to fix what happened in their past.
Right.
They're there to help you move forward, to
Mhm.
give you that skill set, the tools so you can hear one another and then be
Exactly.
able to make good decisions to move forward.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah,
That's
that's what you
amazing.
tell them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I get it. A lot of people are like, no, we've already done that. We don't want that.
Right.
Like, no. And it's like, yeah, you're right. No, that's actually not what's going to happen
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. Apples and oranges, a counselor and a divorce coach.
Sure, exactly. It's a totally different role. It really is. It's a completely different role.
Um, is there any last piece that you would want folks to take away in terms of a divorce coach?
Hmm. Wow. That's a good question. I think just knowing that it's okay, right? It's okay to go through a process that's maybe a little bit different than you envisioned, right?
Hmm.
You don't just have to lawyer up, that we can look at divorce as a way to simply make a change, right? Once connected is
Oh,
now not going to be. And what are the steps that we need to do to make that happen?
yeah, to make that change.
Just to make that change. Mhm.
All right, cue the music now. That
Right? Done.
DJ, DJ Beth, cue some music. Cue the music to make that change.
That's awesome.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Beth, for
Oh
for
my gosh,
joining
of
us on a
course.
on a wonderful podcast.
Yes, yes,
Um,
indeed.
so many good nuggets here of a what is a collaborative divorce coach
Yeah,
and why you need one in your collaborative divorce case.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And I often tell folks too, folks come my way who are considering how to divorce. If
Yeah,
you're thinking about it, go see a divorce coach because
yeah.
they're going to help you suss out like, would this be a good process for you? And
Mhm.
B, what are your options?
Okay.
Right. And so, often I'll have folks come my way. We're thinking about getting divorced. Great.
Yeah.
Come meet with me. And,
Okay.
and let me help lay out the land of what your options are, what that looks like, and how you might be able to move through those.
Well, and how can someone get a hold of you then if they want to meet with you to talk about it?
Wow, that's a good question. They can find me online. I do have a website.
Okay.
BethHirnleCoaching.com. Um, my name is awkward to spell, so perhaps I don't know if there'll be anything written here, but I'll spell it just
Yeah,
for good
please.
reason. It's BethHirnle. So Beth Hirnle at bethhirnlecoaching.com is my email address, and then my
Fantastic.
website. And yeah, come take a peek and shoot me a mail.
And so then your website is also Beth Hirnle.
It's Beth Hirnle Coaching. Yeah,
Beth Hirnle. Okay.
bethhirnlecoaching.com. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I just made my email extra wordy, to just force people to try to learn how to spell my last name. Beth would have just been too simple. So there
There
we
you
go.
go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
And again, Hirnle is spelled Hirnle.
you've got it. Yes,
Yeah.
correct. That's
And
correct.
I always like to end, what's a fun fact about you, Beth, that people wouldn't typically know?
Oh, what is a fun fact about me? Well, I went to graduate school at Gallaudet University, which is the only school in the world for deaf people. So,
What?
yes, yeah, yeah. So my courses were taught in American Sign Language, and I was fully immersed in deaf culture for my graduate school experience. So that's a
Oh my
fun fact that others may not
goodness.
know.
Do you still use your sign
I
language?
do, as a matter of fact. I do. Yes, I have folks on my caseload that are deaf, and I use American Sign Language still to
Oh
this
my
day.
gosh, that is amazing.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is a
me too.
great, cool, fun fact I did not know about you.
It's a cool, fun fact. And that came to me via my sister. She said, "You talk with your hands a lot. Maybe try sign language." I
Oh,
needed a general university requirement in college, and I was like,
yeah.
okay. And then I just fell in love with it. So,
Wow.
I know. I just,
Hey.
people give me a suggestion, Lonnie, and I sometimes just run with it. Um, anyway, I really appreciate you having me on your show today. I'm really grateful and appreciative that you invited me.
Well, Beth, I'm so grateful that you're able to come on today. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
And, again, anyone, if you want to talk about, what is collaborative divorce coaching, what does it look like, suss it out, contact Beth at bethhirnlecoaching.com.
Yeah.
And we'll be sure to include in the, drop your email link in our thing. I can't think of the actual name
Whatever
right
that
now.
thing is, right? I got
Yeah.
you. The podcast
Yeah, the podcast thing,
work.
folks.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay. And
Awesome.
thank you again, Beth. And thank you again to all the listeners for another episode of the Akiona Law podcast, wherein we talk about anything and anything that intersects in the areas of family law, divorce. I am Lani Akiona. Until next time, be well.
The information in this podcast is general advice only and should not in any respect be relied on as specific legal advice.